up, people? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new release from Gothic, Sludge, Night Stalker, Blood Vulture. The band's new album, Die Close, will be released on June 27th via Pure Noise Records. Okay, deep in the heart of a dark, mythical land, New York, in a bygone era, 2025, Blood Vulture has awakened ominous, morose tales of morality, grief, madness, and obsession. The self-described Gothic Sludge project is the brainchild of Jordan Olds, who for nearly a decade has moonlighted as Guarsenio Hall, host of 2 Minutes Till Late Night, the world's only heavy metal talk show and safe place for the New York-based comedian and his friends and idols to put satirical spins on iconic songs from the likes of Fleetwood Mac and Guns N' Roses. Those ambitions are bigger and more cinematic on Blood Vulture's debut LP, Die Close, delivered with the narrative flair of a horror anthology and the emotional punch of a deathbed confession, melding the emotive vocal stylings of grunge's golden era with death metal, goth rock and doom metal. The album blends classic and modern vampiric influences like Bram Stoker's Dracula, Near Dark and Let the Right One In to create a mangled world with symphonic 7-string guitar swells lurking down every dark musical corridor. The record deals with acceptance, Olds explains, noting the existential crisis the characters in his songs face mirror the process of putting the project together. Die Close tells the story of the Master, a reclusive vampire long locked away as he grapples with what it means to live forever in a world of impermanence. Blood Vulture songs are deeply personal, filtering real-life ruminations through fantastical set pieces as tracks like A Dream About Starving to Death and the 3-part Die Close suite ask big questions. What good is immortality if there's no one to share it with? What's the true cost of isolation? In reality, these questions Olds has found himself asking over the past few years, filtering relationships with friends, family, and even his dog through the crimson-hued lens of the afterlife and set to hypnotic quicksand breakdowns. Add in cameos from Kristen Hayter, Shadows Fall vocalist Brian Fair, and old guitar hero AFI Jade Puget, and the project is one of the most accomplished debuts in some time. My favourite grunge bands were bringing in this very specific, distinct vocal style over what to them was the heaviest music, he says. I wanted to push that even further with death metal and sludge metal influences and to make it feel authentic as possible. The album was recorded by Phil Pluscota and Nick Caggio, produced by Jordan Olds, mixed by Mario Quintero, who you might know from bands such as Spotlights and Sisters, and then mastered by the great and majestic Brad Boatwright.
We love you, Brad.
You also might know him from being awesome as fuck. So,
so that's a t-shirt. There's a t-shirt there.
Oh, you wouldn't believe, Duncan.
A t-shirt right there.
Do
you think Brad would be upset if Metal Epidemic actually had a t-shirt suggest? You're just mastered by Brad Boatwright.
You wouldn't believe this, but I've actually had an email from one of the other reviewers saying we should have a t-shirt with some sort of Brad Boatwright love on it. I shit you not.
Can we give him a cut?
True story.
So, there we go.
There was also some cocks and some semen involved, but let's not get into that on this review.
No, not in this review. It's blood on this review.
I had heard one single from this album, and pretty much as soon as I heard it, I was like, okay, this feels like a Dave and Duncan review. This, no questions asked. This could be one for us. It wasn't until I got the album in and I read the press release that I realised who the main songwriter was. I was like, wait, I've watched this guy on YouTube like countless times. I've watched a lot of the cover songs that he's done in the past, but I hadn't put two and two together that this was the same guy. Obviously on YouTube he is covered in corpse paint, so it's not instantly obvious it's the same person. But I'm kind of also surprised that there's not more chat about this album as well, considering his online presence. It's like a big YouTube channel he has, and the bands he's collaborated with on the channel. like you're talking like Mastodon, Cave In, Baroness, Mutoid Man, like big bands. And I had kind of stumbled across the first single from this just kind of randomly. I didn't even know there was an album coming out. But I thought, you know what, this requires a little bit more investigation, Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find out more about Blood Vulture and what he has to offer. Had you heard of this guy before, or
No.
you seen the channel? No.
No, I literally, when you were reading out the stuff at the beginning, I thought you said Arsenio Hall.
Guarsenio.
But I think you said Arsenio Hall, and I was like, what? No. Can you come into America? What? No.
I'm sure you'll have seen him. See if you go into YouTube and put in 2 minutes.
Now if I go in and type it, it'll come up and I'll go, yes, I know that. But
Yeah,
I can't say I've ever stumbled on any of these
Right.
videos.
You'll know exactly who he is when you see him.
If I go to YouTube, it's usually conspiracy theory stuff that pops up as
Right,
like
okay.
an instant for me. That's
Okay.
literally it. It's like, what's that? You like that Diet Coke? Well, let's give you a conspiracy bit. It turns the frogs gay. And I'm like, oh no, getting can out the window.
So Blood Vulture. What can we say about this album? Nostalgia, Duncan, is what I'm going to start with this album.
Nostalgia.
I got quite a bit of nostalgia from this, actually. Quite a handful of bands from the 90s that he's clearly a fan of. Especially, like they mentioned grunge in the press release, but yeah, there's a definite...
One, I mean, you said like grunge acts that used a particular vocal style. It was like grunge act that used like not grunge acts, grunge act.
Yeah. There is a few kind of influences, little things going on here that it did put me in mind of Alice in Chains or Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, bands within that kind of ilk. There was also a little touch of the typo neg in there as well.
Well, you're singing about vampires, Dave.
It's
kind of rude not to acknowledge Big Pete Steele.
You got it. But also there was a little bit of kind of more up-to-date bands as well. So like little bits of like Pallbearer, some Spirit Adrift, Crowbar, a little bit of Mastodon in there as well, actually.
A huge swath of Mastodon. Once again in the vocals, but then Mastodon will tell you themselves in their vocals they were heavily influenced by Alice in Chains. So
yeah, all ties in. But what I liked was, although there were like influences and hints of other bands, it wasn't enough that it felt like, oh, he's just kind of like copying and pasting exactly what they've done before. He's brought, some of his own style and ideas into this that separates him from those other artists as well, especially on that more gothy side, which I quite enjoyed. I enjoyed that the kind of haunting kind of tone on this album. It's got a really cool mood to it, but not done in, it's not like a campy goth, if you know what I mean.
No, it's kind of like, you know how Puppy have that kind of goth swipe that just kind of sits over the top of their music as well. It's not what they're leaning into per se. It's just their sound. That's kind of this year. Although I get the feeling from your press statement, he's maybe leaning into it a little bit more. But yeah, kind of just sit. It's like if it was a foot pedal, that foot pedal would be like that, dead inside. It'd be fantastic. Maybe the pedal would be hitting. Get that? Fantastic, Dave. There we are.
Yeah, it wasn't like a 69 Eyes type album. It wasn't that kind of gothy. A bit darker, a bit more ominous, but also very heavy at times as well. Although like there's a lot of kind of sludge tones at the kind of core of this. The riffs do like fringe on some kind of more extreme, kind of more sinister kind of tones, a little bit of kind of death metal. I mentioned that in the press release as well, but it never felt in any way like he was like jumping ship into like fully going into death metal. It's a very kind of subtle kind of addition to the sound, but it does, I feel like it did add like a smidge more kind of tenacity to some of the kind of riffs on the album, and I really like that. Sometimes albums like this tend to forget about the kind of the riffs, and that they're focusing all their attention on the melodies, But I was pleased to hear this is, it's not the case with this album. There are plenty of big kind of riffy moments on this album, and I think that's maybe where the kind of Crowbar similarity maybe comes in for me. They're a band that are just as determined to knock you off your feet with a riff as they are like a vocal melody, and I feel like Blood Vulture are very similar in that kind of respect.
Yeah, I think there's a riff on I Dream About Starving to Death, which is like 2 steps away from being a down riff.
It
kind of goes bam, 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 and I'm like, holy fuckage, where's Cut in here? It's not freaking in the background, snap a plane.
For sure. Also an album that for a debut is very confident and well planned out as well. Like we've spoken about this in the past, debuts don't tend to quite always have their shit together at that stage, early stage, but this album does. He has a clear idea of what the Blood Vulture sound is.
That blows my, like, I didn't know that. So once again, I don't read the press at all. So to me, I thought this was them finally landing Pure Noise Records. Like been around for a couple of years, couple of albums out. Yeah. This is the big, main label debut. I didn't realize this was a kind of relatively short-lived project, which has found its way on Pure Noise. Not the logical choice for Pure Noise either, which I kind of love about it.
Yeah.
Because we are going to be talking about another Pure Noise album tonight in reviews. This couldn't be any further from it's on the other fucking side of the moon, Dave. But I think it really works for them as a label. But like, if you'd asked me to like bet the house on this being a debut album, I would have said absolutely not. So I'd be houseless.
It definitely nothing feels out of place on this album. There's no like kind of risky moments that on the album that don't pay off. Even like the kind of additional synths on here are really tasteful. They add a kind of like almost kind of like 80s movie kind of quality to some of the tracks.
Lost Boys, Dave. It's the Lost Boys. And it's fucking Lost Boys soundtrack. It all ties in. A wee bit Near Dark as well. So tip the cap. Tip the cap.
I think it's Entwined. I think was the track. It's the one with the guest, the one with Kirsten on it. That was giving me like huge 80s kind of like Lost Boys, Fright Night, Monster Squad, all that kind of those kind of movies. But again, a real kind of sense of nostalgia as well. But also, I like the fact that those parts didn't feel like last minute, like it just chucked them on at the end. They felt like they were part of the construction early on when writing these songs. Also cool to hear Brian Fair of Shadows Fall on Burn For It, which when I was listening to this, I was like, I don't know if that track was placed intentionally after the mid-album interlude. Because there's an acoustic guitar on that interlude that is a little bit Shadows Fall. When it was playing, I was like, that's kind of Shadows Fall. And then next track comes in, has Brian on it. But that track was probably less intense than I was expecting. It's a bit more mid-paced. There's some kind of gothy strings on it. Cool groove as well. And Brian's adding in kind of more textured kind of vocals underneath Jordan's melody, which was cool. Also want to just touch on Jordan as well, because as much as this is like musically very accomplished, I think the vocals on the album are what makes it memorable.
Absolutely insane. Insanely good. The counter melodies. Oh my good God.
Hooks on it are great. Pretty much every track has a chorus that you'll be like wanting to sing along to. He has an excellent voice. The cleaner side, you do get that kind of. There's a little bit of Jerry Cantrell in there as well, I think, on his voice, on the cleaner side. But there is some kind of harsher tones added in, plus the guest vocals. So you do get a good mixture of kind of vocal styles and textures. I especially like the vocals on the closing track, Die Close Finale, which brings the album to a very like climactic kind of finish. There's a big kind of layering of kind of harmonies on that track. A little bit Devin Townsend, I thought, on the in the delivery, but it's a killer closing track. I love what they did vocally on that one. A little bit more uplifting the final track, than what's come before it. But it felt like a conclusion. It felt like the last track of the album. Lengthwise, it's 10 tracks, about 45 minutes. My only thing with this album is I felt like maybe could have trimmed a little bit off that. I did feel like towards the end of the album, it was maybe starting to feel a little bit stretched out. Like, I don't think there was anything necessarily like new being added to the mix by the time you got into that last kind of portion of the album. I think maybe 35 to 40, I think maybe would have suited this better. And it wouldn't have felt like it was kind of revisiting some of the same ideas when it got to that last part of the album. But that aside, very enjoyable listen. And even when the tracks did start to become maybe a little bit familiar later on, the production of the album was still really like fun to listen to. It's got plenty of weight to it. The drum tones are nice and deep. Guitars have a good bite, if you know what I'm saying. But it doesn't sound over edited. The mixing and mastering from like Mario and Brad is absolutely spot on in this album. So from hearing the first single, I was interested. After I heard the album, I'm kind of sold on these guys, or this guy. Really good job for a debut album. Very good. What about yourself? What you making of this?
All I'm going to say is when you said that you felt the album was a bit long, I instantly got the urge to go. Like someone had held up a crucifix in front of me. No, not my watch. This is fucking great. This is everything I love.
Nice.
Like the guitar work for a start. Jesus Christ. So you get really some hauntingly beautiful guitar parts. See when it switches into that low end sludge, it is just fucking dank. It's like the undercarriage of a vampire that's been running a half marathon. Swampy. Just really nasty.
Yeah.
And it's not overused either. And it's actually, when he does use it, sometimes it is for punch, but sometimes it's to sit under huge melodies.
Yeah.
Which just lift everything up. You've kind of touched on some of the production things, but I'll come back to the drums. I think the drum production in this is very live room feel, just like in the best possible way. It has punch, but it's not there to kind of distract. Or be the prominent feature like a lot of bands these days seem to want to try and lift the drummer up for some reason. I say keep him down. That's Duncan's rule of thumb is we'll have our things, Dave. You mentioned the key work.
Synths are awesome.
Synths are fucking incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned Entwined. It was the one I was going to lean into straight away because that the kind of spangly sort of playing there is hugely 80s. That's an 80s tone. I'm sure I had a Yamaha with that on it when I was a youngin'. It's fucking brilliant, and it totally works against it. Vocals, this album was on a completely different level. It's just operates at a scarily high level of confidence and precision. Like we mentioned, the melodies are phenomenal. The harmonizing is incredible. But then every single song is underpinned with this really memorable hook or repetition of a phrase. This is why I don't think the album felt particularly long to me. Is there's almost something kind of cult-like or hypnotic about the repetitive need to come back to these very similar vocal melodies or very similar phrases which you end up every single time that I'm dead. Like this, what about my house voice? You're clearly alive. I'm fucking dead, right? Back off. Let me be goth. It's been a while. You never lose it though. Once you've been goth, you never turn back. But it's absolutely incredible. I put this as a pre-order on our phone. I was like, you're gonna love this. It'll be next year before she listens to it. But then she'll be like, oh, you heard this band. But I put on there. And the way I described it to her is I was like, think Theatrics of Ghost, think Melody of Mastodon, and think grunge of Alice in Chains. If it was all just in a big group together with just killer hooks, go forth. and she listened to one of the 2 singles in the pre-release, and she was like, "That, oh yeah, I'll definitely be checking that later on," because it just hooked into it, and that's what I think the album has in spades. Is none of the songs take too long to really get going. The vocal hook hits you pretty quick. And then the track continues to build on it. Some of the guitar solo work on this is absolutely phenomenal as well. And then I love the Die Close intro, the overture, the interlude middle, which is a play on the original, and then the kind of full reimagined version at the end. So you keep coming back to revisit this, which once again has that kind of idea of movie score. Like if you sat down and watched like any movie from the 80s, mostly from the 80s, like you would have your central theme song to the movie. You would have a version of it, like a sadder version in the middle where the hero has to pick himself up, dust himself off and get back in it. And then you'd have the long, like super cool, happy version at the end, which was uplifting because you'd reached the end of the movie. It's kind of what he's utilised here. Yeah. It's a very clever technique and it works so well. I also, with a Davey cap on, think it works really well as a pressing on a vinyl. Like I think when you get through Entwined, I feel like that's you closed out. Like the first half of it would be vinyl release, and then you, like you mentioned, you then kick into the interlude, which kind of builds you into the guest appearance by Brian Fair, who's, I've always loved him as a vocalist. I think he's got of that ilk of bands and that kind of new wave of American heavy metal. Like I always kind of felt like he was. I don't want to take pot shots at Shadowsville, but I thought he was better than that band. You know what I mean? Like, you could do better, son. Come on. But it's great to hear him stretching on something like this. And from what you're saying, it sounds like this guy has a plethora of people that he can lean into for maybe future appearances. The Mastodon influence is huge on this, as well as the Alice in Chains. I was getting huge amounts of Blood Mountain and Crack the Sky on this. And I mean that in the best possible way. Just really, 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 really good. I have not an issue with the runtime on this at all. I've spun this several times and it's a stream. I fucking hate streams. I want to stress this again. Understand that some organizations still feel the need to use streams in 2025. I don't get it, but then I'm not protecting music or have fear of piracy like some labels do. But I've been back to this many, many, many times over, and I will be back to this many, many times throughout the year. This would pair really well with a lot of music that I listen to, but the one that I found it pairs exceptionally well with, and it couldn't sound anything like this at all, but it is goth as fuck, is that brand new Gallows album. So I'm jumping right off kind of 80s retro new wave synth punk, and then right into like a sludgy version of that. If I had to describe this album, I would describe it as hella goth. In the best possible way. I genuinely think this is brilliant, like absolutely brilliant, and for a debut it's even more remarkable. The thing you mentioned about debuts with bands and bands putting too much into it is accurate. I think it's harder if you're a solo artist. It's not like you don't have that. You have your vision on everything, and it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And I can't believe I'm going to mention this as a last thing of a, if you like this, go and check out. And it's not the same genre. And this is the second time I've mentioned this band in a month. And I swear to God, I went through about a decade never mentioning them. A band from Chicago called Dust to Dust, who released, I think it was 2 new metal albums back in the day. They weren't really new metal albums, but their debut, self-titled, has a lot of the elements here that this has, like, and I think it was predominantly written by one guy as well, who did all the keys and all the vocals and all the guitar work and all the rest. And it's a similar thing. It's like a kind of proto version of this, built a bit more new metal-y, a bit more gimmicky, but it's in that similar vein of it has a fully defined sound and you're in. I was also quite morbid actually when I think about the lyrics. Then you die. It's a lot of death, but in the best possible. It's why I love Typo Negative. Let's bring this in, but I think this is fucking great. I can't wait to spin this many more times this year. And you know what, Dave? I'm going to say it. I was only going to say it once tonight, but I'm going to say it on this review here. And if that artwork appeared in a t-shirt, wear the fucking shit out of that. That's what I call some big old beastie artwork. It reminds me of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The kind of facade that Gary Oldman's in on the front cover. Very cool. Very cool.
Nice. Okay. Final thing. Scores for the new Blood Vulture album. As I said, very confident debut. I think if this is what he's capable of on a first album, then I imagine like albums 2 and 3 are just going to be like getting better and better. So I'm excited to hear where this goes. For this album, I'm going 4 out of 5. Duncan, what are you thinking?
I'm coming above you. 4.5 for me. Ooh. I fucking love this.
Nice.
Really, really, really good. Yes, please check it out.
Yeah. Blood Vulture, Die Close, out on June 27th via Pure Noise Records. Check out the links to the band, pre-order one of the singles, have a listen, see what you think. Let us know your opinions in the comments. That is a review. Thanks for checking out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.